Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Uzma Jaffrey. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Friday, the 24th of September. Active COVID-19 cases in India lowest in 188 days. Government issues guidelines ahead of festivals. U.S. Vice President Suomoto refers to Pakistan's role in terrorism during meeting with Indian PM Modi. And world powers agree to push Taliban to form inclusive government in Afghanistan. And now for all the details. India logged 31,382 new coronavirus infections in the last 24 hours, taking the cases tally to 33.59 million on Friday, while the active cases have declined to 300,162, the lowest in 188 days. The central government has issued a number of guidelines, including restrictions on mass gatherings ahead of upcoming festive season in the country from October to November.
India's active COVID-19 cases on Friday declined to 300,162, the lowest in 188 days, while infections tally stood at 33.59 million after 31,382 fresh cases were registered in the last 24 hours. The active cases comprise 0.89% of the total infections, the lowest since March 2020. While the nationwide recovery rate was recorded at 97.78%, the Health Ministry said. Ahead of the upcoming festival season, the centre government has issued fresh guidelines and asked states to continue with curfews and other restrictions to influence adherence to COVID-appropriate behaviour. Mass gatherings should be avoided in areas identified as containment zones and in districts reporting more than 5% case positivity.
Third wave is always a distinct possibility, and thankfully what has happened is that we have been able to get large population vaccinated who have received at least one dose, but also a large fraction of population have received both the doses.
Meanwhile, the South Asian nation crossed yet another milestone in its COVID vaccination drive on Friday, with the total doses administered so far crossing the 840 million mark. Officials said over 66% of the population above 18 years of age has received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine so far.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is in the United States to attend Quad Leaders Summit, addressed United Nations General Assembly held meeting with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris at the White House on Thursday, during which they decided to further cement the Indo-U.S. strategic partnership. Kamala Harris Suomoto referred to Pakistan's role in terrorism and asked the country to stop supporting terror groups.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris in Washington on Thursday as part of a three-day official visit to the U.S. During the meeting, Kamala Harris Suomoto referred to Pakistan's role with regard to terrorism and agreed on the need to rein in and closely monitor Islamabad's support for terror groups, informed India's Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla in a press briefing.
In that context, when the issue of terrorism came up, the Vice President Suomoto referred to Pakistan's role in that regard. She said that there were terror groups that were working there. She asked Pakistan to take action so that these groups do not impact on U.S. security and that of India.
The two leaders exchanged views on a number of issues, including the situation in Afghanistan, the coronavirus pandemic, tackling climate change, as well as the US and India's commitment towards the Indo-Pacific region. Prime Minister Modi, who is on his first visit abroad beyond the neighbourhood since the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak to participate in Quad's Leaders Summit, addressed at the United Nations General Assembly, earlier met with his Australian counterpart Scott Morrison, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, and held meetings with 5 global CEOs for potential investment in India. His address at the UNGA on Saturday will focus on the pressing global challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the need to combat terrorism, climate change, and other important issues.
Moving on. The 5 permanent UN Security Council members agreed to push Taliban to form an inclusive government in Afghanistan during their meeting this week. While China and Russia have described last month's Taliban takeover as a defeat for the United States, no country has so far moved to recognize a government that includes international pariahs.
The 5 permanent UN Security Council members found common ground in a meeting this week on Afghanistan, with officials saying all the powers would press the Taliban to be more inclusive after their military takeover. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the foreign ministers of Britain, France and Russia met in person, while their Chinese counterpart Wang Yi joined them virtually for the talks. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told reporters after the meeting during the annual General Assembly that Security Council powers all want a peaceful and stable Afghanistan, where rights of women are respected, that is not a sanctuary for terrorism, and where there is an inclusive government representing all sections of the population. China and Russia have described last month's Taliban takeover as a defeat for the United States, but no country has so far moved to recognize a government that includes international pariahs. Meanwhile, Amir Khan Muttaqi, the acting foreign minister of the newly formed Taliban government, said on Thursday that Afghanistan wants to have friendly relations with the international community as well as the neighboring countries. He, however, noted that exerting pressure on the country will not benefit anyone.
Hundreds of trucks have continued to line the mountainous road leading to Torkhum, the Pakistan-Afghan border crossing, as officials say exports to Afghanistan have dwindled following the Taliban takeover. After an abrupt end to billions of dollars in foreign aid, economic crisis is among the biggest challenges facing the Taliban.
Hundreds of trucks lined the winding mountainous road leading to Torkhum, the Pakistan-Afghan border crossing, on Thursday. Officials say that is because exports to Afghanistan have dwindled in the days after the Taliban takeover. Some truck drivers said fewer items were going to Afghanistan from Pakistan's side, but they were, however, upbeat because the vegetable and fruit season in Afghanistan had helped increase imports of these items from the war-ravaged country. They expressed hope things will improve.
کوم دا نو سیټ اپ جوړ شوی دی کنه په دې به وجه باندې چې کوم ایکسپورټس موږ روان دي کنه انسټیبিলিټي د وجه التا مطلب پوزیشن دا څه نه دی واضح خلک کېږي چې کوم ایکسپورټ کا نو په ایکسپورټ کې ډیر کم راغلی لګنه ډیر زیات
چې مخکې د دې بلونه په پاکستان به موږ مطلب لارګه وړ په سرات چینی بموړه لکه خوراکي توګه غوړي او دا شی موږ ډیر وس یو سیمټو ته موږ لګېدلی.
Meanwhile, an official at Chaman, another Pakistan-Afghan border, said that trade had picked up there because the Taliban had reduced taxes and also put an end to bribes. Afghanistan's Taliban government bolstered its economic team last week as the group tries to revive a financial system in shock from the abrupt end to billions of dollars in foreign aid. The economic crisis is among the biggest challenges facing the Taliban.
In news from Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka has begun vaccinating children aged between 12 to 19 years with co-morbidities. Reports suggested that children between 12 to 19 years of age with special health needs and disabilities would receive the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine from Friday under the consultation of respective medical specialists in regional hospitals. The vaccination drive will first cover Colombo, Anuradhapura and Kurunegala districts and subsequently cover other areas. This comes as authorities plan to reopen schools soon, which have remained closed amid successive lockdowns. Sri Lanka had last week extended its nationwide lockdown till October 1 amid a surge in infections. The island nation has so far reported over 510,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with more than 12,440 deaths. Amid the ongoing pandemic that has created a cycle of mental health struggles, physical inactivity, local authorities in India's Jammu and Kashmir this week organized a 3-day 6th Pencak Silat championship, which saw participation from around 16 districts of region. The Pencak Silat is a mixed martial art game and is very popular in Kashmir Valley.
Local authorities in India's northern Jammu and Kashmir territory organized its 6th Pencak Silat championship this week in Srinagar city, which saw participation from around 16 districts of region. The Pencak Silat is an umbrella term for a class of related Indonesian martial arts and is very popular in Kashmir Valley. The tournament primarily revolves around punching, kicking and throwing. The aim of the competition was to promote fitness, mental, physical, as well as to encourage the youth for a national level competition, which is scheduled for next month in neighbouring Chandigarh city. A girl participant from Jammu city said events like such helps in boosting self-confidence as well as learning self-defense.
से लड़कियों को ये सेल्फ डिफेंस इसमें हमारा पर्सनली हमारा कॉन्फिडेंस इनबिल्ट होता है, हमें बात करने का ढंग पता चलेगा, हम बाहर जाएंगे, लोगों से मिलेंगे, हमारा कॉन्फिडेंस और बिल्ट होगा, हम इंडिया के लिए खेलेंगे.
According to the organizers, proper standard operating procedures were being followed and all the precautions being taken as the COVID-19 pandemic still exists.
16 डिस्ट्रिक्टों ने पार्टिसिपेट किया और तकरीबन 600 बच्चों के आसपास की पार्टिसिपेशन है जो अलग अलग 3 दिनों में खेलेंगे. हमने बाई फेजेस करा हुआ ताकि हर दिन 200 से ज़्यादा पार्टिसिपेशन ना हो कोविड को मद्देनज़र रखते हुए.
For many participants, events like such offers a plethora of career opportunities in sports and bring country's name into limelight in international sports meets.
Artisans in India's northeastern Assam state have begun making idols of Hindu goddess Durga ahead of the annual Durga Puja festival. Amid the pandemic, idol makers are taking full precautionary measures, while the government has also issued strict guidelines to avoid making larger-than-life idols of the goddess, as there won't be mass public gatherings.
As the festive season is around the corner, idol makers in Guwahati city of India's northeastern Assam state have begun their artistic work for the upcoming Hindu festival of Durga Puja. Idol makers every year create figurines of goddess Durga out of straw, chaff, clay and cow dung to be installed in pandals or makeshift tents for worship during the festival. Durga Puja is celebrated annually during the 7th month of the Hindu calendar, which typically falls between September and October. Owner of an idol shop, Nirmal Pal, said this time due to government guidelines amid Covid-19, they were not making larger-than-life idols of the goddess as public gatherings would be restricted.
कोविड के कारण गया साल में भी हम 6 फुट 7 फुट का मूर्ति बनाया था. गवर्नमेंट से वही गाइडलाइन दिया था. इस बार भी वही है. 6 फुट 7 फुट हार्डली 8 फुट का ऊपर मूर्ति नहीं बन रहा है इस बार. गवर्नमेंट तो बोला है कि ज़्यादा भीड़ नहीं करना चाहिए, ज़्यादा ऊंचा मूर्ति नहीं बनाना चाहिए, इसलिए इस बार मूर्ति भी 8 फुट का अंदर ही सब हो रहा है.
Durga Puja festival is widely celebrated across India, especially in states of West Bengal, Tripura and Assam. It is believed that during the festival, Goddess Durga descends on earth to rid off demons and bless her devotees with happiness and prosperity.
Well, that's the way it was in South Asia this evening. Before we conclude the top stories once again. Active COVID-19 cases in India lowest in 188 days. Government issues guidelines ahead of festivals. US Vice President Moto refers to Pakistan's role in terrorism during meeting with Indian PM Modi. And world powers agree to push Taliban to form inclusive government in Afghanistan. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time next week. Have a great weekend. Good night.